Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session on AWS Firewall Manager. This is a new capability that we launched a month and a half ago. And this is a new service that allows you to configure and manage your firewall rules across accounts and applications. And I'm Venkat Vijayaraghavan. I'm a product manager at AWS, and I'm really glad to be talking to you about this today. Very quickly, a view into the agenda. We'll quickly look at what is Firewall Manager, more of an introduction to AWS Firewall Manager. And you will also see how do you get started with a quick demo. I'll walk you through how do you set up Firewall Manager policies and how it protects your applications. Now, taking a step back, when you have web applications, often these applications face a large number of threats from the internet. And these are some of the common types of threats, and by no means exhaustive list of threats. Your application could be facing application vulnerabilities, which could be SQL injection attacks or cross-site scripting attacks, or you could be facing HTTP flood kind of attacks, which are more volumetric or DDoS attacks at HTTP layer. Or it could be bots and scrapers trying to steal content or premium content from your web application. How do you protect against all these types of attacks? And there are various tools available on AWS. But one of the things that we hear from customers a lot is there are tools available on AWS, but then there are still challenges that they face in protecting these applications across their organization. First one being, typically in a large organization, there are a large number of accounts and large number of resources, and applications tend to be spread across these accounts and resources. It's really hard to manage security policies and have them consistently enforced across all the accounts and resources. Secondly, in large organizations, new applications are created all the time, and there are new resources, and sometimes applications change architecture, or sometimes there are new accounts altogether that show up. How do you ensure that all these applications or new accounts are protected starting day one? And lastly, often when you have all these diverse set of applications spread across accounts and resources, you want a single place to have visibility on threats across all these applications. And customers often ask us for a single place to monitor and, more importantly, respond to any threats across organization. Now, for instance, when you have a single when you have a threat where you have some set of IPs or a single set of IP posing a threat to your application, how do you ensure that to remediate that threat, you have one place to go to and you can apply or blacklist that set of IPs and have that go away altogether across your organization? To address all these challenges is why we launched AWS Firewall Manager. AWS Firewall Manager, as I said earlier on, is a security management tool which allows you to centrally configure and manage web application firewall rules across all your accounts and applications that exist in your organization. Let's talk more about Firewall Manager. But before that, today, AWS Firewall Manager helps you configure AWS WAF rules. What this means is that WAF, for some of you who might not know, is a web application firewall that helps detect and mitigate any application layer threats or threats at HTTP layer. Firewall Manager makes it easy to configure WAF rules by converting the WAF rules into policies. So now you can have policies that are enforced across your organization, and those policies apply AWS WAF rules across your organization. And for some of you who might not already know about AWS WAF is a web application firewall, which gives you highly flexible traffic filtering rules, allowing you to write custom rules and, more importantly, automations, all to respond to threats at HTTP layer. AWS Web Application Firewall also gives you managed rules to block any known malicious requests before it even hits your application. And lastly, Web Application Firewall also gives you visibility into the threats that are being detected and mitigated. And you can actively monitor those or alert yourself using CloudWatch alerts. And that also gives you the opportunity to tune those rules every time there are new threats that emerge. So with that introduction to AWS WAF and Firewall Manager, let's talk a little bit about some of the key benefits of Firewall Manager. So in terms of some of the key benefits, Firewall Manager, first and foremost, gives you the simplified management of rules across accounts. And Firewall Manager also gives you the ability to ensure compliance to a certain set of rules that you know are mandatory for your organization. And then Firewall Manager also integrates with the marketplace rules so that you don't have to write your own rules. You can simply subscribe to the marketplace rules and have them deployed as part of the Firewall Manager policies. And lastly, as I was talking about earlier, the rapid response is something Firewall Manager solves because you now have one place across your organization to respond to an internet attack. Now let's dig into each one a little bit more so that you have a better sense of understanding of what I'm talking about. First of all, it's the simplifying firewall rule management across accounts and resources. One of the first things that Firewall Manager does is integrates with AWS Organizations so that you can create WAF rules across accounts. So what this really means is that by integrating with organizations, what Firewall Manager gives you is the ability to apply rules across accounts so that without you having to worry about IAM permissions or creating roles and delegating IAM permissions. Firewall Manager integration with organizations just takes care of all of those challenges. Now, just because you are applying rules across your organization doesn't mean you cannot have customized rules for individual applications. Firewall Manager allows global rules across organization, at the same time allows hierarchical rules so that your individual application owner or individual account owner can have more specific rules that are more pertinent to that particular application or that particular account. So you have the flexibility of global rules along with more specific application rules. The second benefit is ensuring compliance of existing and new applications. As I was talking about earlier, often in a large organization, there are new applications created all the time, and often it's easy for application owners to either intentionally or inadvertently change the application architecture. That means there are new ALBs created all the time, or some applications use CloudFront distributions, or some use API gateway and so on. How do you ensure that all these are consistently protected even as new resources are created? That's where Firewall Manager helps by automatically monitoring for new resources and new accounts. And it not just discovers it, but also gives you an option to automatically remediate those so that you can choose to either just notify yourself or choose to automatically apply those policies on those new resources or accounts as well. Now, these are very useful in typical scenarios like when you have to adhere to, say, export regulations and you want to block certain known some certain countries or certain IP addresses, and you want to make sure that these are mandatory rules that every account in your organization adheres to. So you can simply use Firewall Manager and create a policy to block these embargoed countries automatically when new resources are created. The third benefit that I'm going to talk about today is more easily deployed marketplace rules. And of course, we will see this in action later on. But the idea is, some of you might know already how AWS WAF launched a capability a few months ago called Manage Rules for AWS WAF, which is the ability for you to simply subscribe to pre-configured rules from AWS Marketplace. And these pre-configured rules are written and curated and constantly updated by some of the more popular vendors like AlertLogic, Fortinet, Trend Micro, F5, TrustWave, and Imperva, who are the current vendors that are onboarded. And these vendors have made multiple products available via AWS Marketplace. So you can simply subscribe to one of those products, which is actually a set of rules, and deploy it in front of your application. Now with Firewall Manager, you have the option of using Marketplace rules along with the option of using them across accounts. So now you can say, if you have a PCI workload, and often PCI workloads have the requirement to have some sort of common WAF rules like OWASP core rule sets. So now you can say, for these PCI workloads, apply this set of OWASP rule from this particular vendor. And Firewall Manager makes sure that all your applications, even the new ones or existing ones, are consistently protected by these OWASP rules provided by that particular vendor. And lastly, the fourth benefit I want to highlight today is enabling rapid response to internet attacks. So often there are new threats emerging. For instance, there are new CVE patches, zero-day vulnerability attacks that emerge, and you want to apply a CVE patch across all your applications. Or maybe you are using Guard Duty. That's again another service that AWS launched recently that allows you to be aware of threats that are happening in your account or organization, and you want to block some of those bad actors across your organization. So in those cases, you can simply use Firewall Manager, which gives you one place to apply that particular remediation. And this is a workflow that you can use to simply consume Guard Duty findings, which are delivered to you via CloudWatch events, and automatically consume those via Lambda and add those findings or add those IP addresses in those findings to Firewall Manager, which automatically uses AWS WAF to block those IP addresses everywhere across all your accounts. And you can do the same thing with CVE patches as well. You could use apply a CVE patch, either your own patch or subscribe to a marketplace rule and apply it across all your applications. Very useful in terms of when it comes to incident response. So now that we saw some of the benefits, let's quickly also look at some of the high-level features that we might have addressed, but we'll look at them separately as well. First thing that Firewall Manager does is, of course, integrate with AWS Organizations, and I mentioned this to you briefly earlier on. So what this means is that you don't have to create roles and delegate permissions across accounts. Firewall Manager just takes care of all of this for you. Firewall Manager also allows monitoring of policy drifts, meaning any policies that you create on Firewall Manager is monitored, so that when there are new resources or when there are accidental changes in resource configurations, you can choose to either notify yourself or automatically remediate those. Firewall Manager also gives you the ability to scope down resources. More specifically, what I mean by that is not only can you apply rules or policies that span across the entire account, you can scope it down to specific resources that match a particular tag. So for instance, you can say you can apply a certain types of rules for resources that are tagged with your prod accounts. That allows Firewall Manager to identify resources with that particular tag and only apply rules to that particular resources. So you can scope it down more narrowly and have multiple policies with different scopes. And I talked about the hierarchical rule enforcement earlier. So what that means is that you can apply global rules that apply to entire organization, while also giving the individual account owners or application owners the ability to have customized rules. And then we talked about the visibility earlier on, but I want to highlight a couple of features in terms of visibility that Firewall Manager provides. Firewall Manager, of course, provides central visibility across the entire organization. But more importantly, Firewall Manager gives you a dashboard for auditing when resources go non-compliant, or rather audit which resources are non-compliant or which accounts are non-compliant, and you can take actions either manually or automatically based on that dashboard. Firewall Manager also gives you more real-time notifications via SNS for any events that cause non-compliance. Maybe those events could be because there are new resources that were created, or somebody accidentally deleting existing rule that you created, and so on. So you can monitor all these non-compliance events happening within your organization. Some of the typical use cases, and I just want to talk about this because this is how some of our early customers have been using Firewall Manager. One of the more popular use cases is, I talked about this earlier on as well, if you have regulatory requirements to block certain embargoed countries, either to adhere to, say, export regulations or for other reasons, you can simply use Firewall Manager to apply that particular rule across all your organization. Similarly, you can do the same thing with IP reputation lists, because there are some IPs that are known to be bad. There is no reason why those IPs need to make contact with any part of your organization. So just block that from entering your application perimeter by blocking them via AWS WAF. The other use case, again, very common, is applying WASP rules, often from some of our vendors from Marketplace, and apply those across all your organizations or your applications that require PCI compliance. Because PCI compliance often requires that you subscribe to or you have enabled WASP core rule sets. So this is, again, another common scenario that we see from our customers. All right, now that we saw this introduction about Firewall Manager, and we saw some of the benefits of Firewall Manager, let's just start talking about how you get started and a quick demo as well. I'll walk you through the console as I talk about how to get started. But before we get started, there are some prerequisites that you do as a one-time setup before you can use Firewall Manager in your organization. First thing that you do is you enable AWS Organizations full features. As I've been talking about multiple times, Firewall Manager is integrated with organizations. What that means is that using organizations is a prerequisite. Now, some of you might already know with this, but when you have multiple accounts or when you have a consolidated billing hierarchy, you are by default using organizations, but you are not using organizations full features, which allows AWS services to get the permissions to create policies across accounts. You can do or enable all features within AWS organizations by simply choosing to enable all features, and this begins the process of invitations being sent to all accounts in the organization. And once all accounts in the organization accept the invitation, you have now enabled full features. This is a prerequisite that we need for you before you can use Firewall Manager. And this is my test account. So I'll go back to my slide to talk about other prerequisites. The second thing that you do, we require you to do, is enable AWS Config Recorder in all AWS accounts. The reason why Firewall Manager needs AWS Config in all your accounts is that allows us to monitor resources or resource config changes in each of those accounts. So that means if you don't enable config, Firewall Manager would not know when there are new resources created and won't be able to apply firewall rules across all those new resources. Let me show you how you can do that in the same account that I just saw. So I'm going to go to the AWS config console, and it's pretty simple. So you simply go to the config console, and it's already turned on for me, but all you have to do is, I'll probably show it how it's done. Turn it on, and you might want to choose or certain options as to you want to with specific bucket name that you want to choose and so on. Those are optional, but you can just use the default settings and simply save the config recorder as is. So, and you'll have to do this across all your accounts. that allows us to get the notifications across all accounts. The last thing that you have to do is designate an account as a firewall manager administrator, or rather a security administrator. Think of this account as your security owner for your organization who has the permissions to write firewall rules or policies across your accounts. So you trust this person to do the right thing to apply global policies. Let me log in to the console to show you how you do that. So this is my demo account, and I'm going to go to my Firewall Manager console, which is the same as the WAF and Shield console. So here you see there is AWS WAF and Shield, and then there is AWS Firewall Manager. So I go to the AWS Firewall Manager and already see that there are some prerequisites that are already set up. And in this case, I already set up this account is already set up as the Firewall Manager administrator. I can see that here because it says my master account of the organization has already set up this account as the Firewall Manager administrator. So this account is currently the administrator account for my entire organization. And for some more clarity, this is the organization setup that I have in my demo account, which I'm going to walk you through the next few slides. So I have this demo master account, which is the organization master, or by default, the payer account in your consolidated bill. And that master account has designated the security admin account as the Firewall Manager administrator. So security admin is the one that's currently the Firewall Manager administrator in my account. And then there is a demo member account, which is like any other ordinary account in my organization that has multiple applications. And for this test organization or the demo organization, I have these ALBs already set up so that I can walk you through how Firewall Manager works. So with that setup in mind, let me walk you through some of the basic steps of how to get started with Firewall Manager and create policies. The first thing that you do with Firewall Manager is, as a security admin in your organization, you create rule groups. Rule groups could be either custom rule groups, which could be your own IP blacklists or your own rules, or they could be managed rules that you subscribe from the AWS Marketplace. So you identify a rule group that you want to use as part of the policy. You can create this as part of the policy as well. I'll show that to you in a bit. And then you specify the policy scope. Do you want to apply this to all your ALBs, all your CloudFront distributions, or maybe you want to further narrow it down by using tags and say, don't or apply or don't apply those to resources that have this particular tag. And lastly, we just create the policy after reviewing the contents that you created. So that's about how Firewall Manager works. And let me move to my console and show you how we create Firewall Manager policies. So, and for simplicity, I already have multiple, this is the demo master account that I showed you earlier. And this is the member account, which just another third account in my organization. As you see, none of those accounts have any WAF rules right now, but they do have ALBs. So what I want to show is how Firewall Manager policy is created and automatically applies WAF rules across all ALBs in these three accounts. I'm going to start creating a policy. And for simplicity, actually, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to go back and show you how I can subscribe a rule group from Marketplace. So in this case, I already subscribed Alert Logic rule set from Marketplace. Optionally, I could choose F5 and simply continue to subscribe and subscribe from Marketplace. So what this does is it automatically makes the rule group available in my account for me to use. And I can use it pay as you go until I need it and then unsubscribe when I don't need it. So I have these two rule groups I just use for demo purposes. But what I've also done is on all my other accounts, the master account and the member account in my organization, already subscribe to this particular rule group. I'm going to try and show how you can apply that alert logic rule group, which is the first one on my list. That's why I picked them, to across all my accounts. So I create a policy, and I'm going to choose an existing rule group. And I'm going to do that in Virginia. I'm going to say it's a demo policy and choose the rule group that, or add the rule group. And I have the option of adding the rule group in account mode or use the action set by the vendor, which is alert logic in this case. I want to start with count so that it does not have any adverse impact on my applications. I don't have actual traffic on my application, but that's something that I would recommend you do when you sign up for any rule or even a custom rule. Always set it on count mode, know the impact before converting into a block mode. And then I define the policy scope, as I talked about earlier. So now I have ALBs created in my account. So I'm going to choose a specifier as an ALB. And I don't have any tags. So right now I'm not going to choose any tags, but optionally, you could choose to include resources only with this tag or exclude them. I'm not going to use tags for now. And then the other option you have is, what do you do with new resources that are created? Do you want to automatically remediate those as well? And I would say, yes, just apply this policy to any new resources that are created as well. So I'm going to say, this is just a review screen, and then you simply review, and then say go. So what this is going to do is, it typically takes a minute to up to 3 minutes to identify or discover rather all the accounts and resources in the accounts that match scope of this particular policy. And as soon as Firewall Manager has discovered, it's going to automatically apply the WAF rules, or more specifically the alert logic rules that you previously chose, and apply it across all those accounts and all those resources. So while that happens, I'm going to go back to my slide and come back in a minute to show you the compliance status. So as I talked about earlier, so these are the 3 steps. So as a security admin, you can create a policy. That means only the security administrator of that organization can create this policy. And that security administrator decides which rule group they want to use. And then specify the policy scope. As I talked about earlier, you can choose ALBs, or you can choose the tags to choose resources from. And you can choose to include or exclude tags as well. And then lastly, you simply create the policy. One of the things that I wanted to show as part of policy creation is, when Firewall Manager creates policies, it creates WAF rules in each account. But in addition, it also creates config rules in each of those accounts. The config rules, as I might have mentioned earlier in this session, is something that we need to monitor new resources and action on those changes, if any, on those resources. That is what allows us to ensure that new resources are always in compliance, and we can automatically add WAF rules on those new resources. Okay, now that it's been a minute or so, I think maybe I'm going to see if it applied policies and what is the current status. So as it shows, so it's still going through my 3 accounts, and it says that I found 3 accounts that matches that scope, and this particular account, which is my current security administrator account, which is fully compliant. There are no resources that are non-compliant, but still, this particular account has 1 resource that is not compliant. What I'm going to do is, this is the demo master account. So I'm going to go to my master account and go to the WAF console and see why it's not compliant. I'm going to go to the WAF console and see or show how there is a web ACL created in those accounts. So as you see, this is a new Firewall Manager managed web ACL that was created by Firewall Manager Security Administrator in this account. There were no WAF rules before, right? And you also see that to this webACL, Firewall Manager added rightly the alert logic rule that we said Firewall Manager should add. And rightly, there is also a ALB associated, ALB associated with this particular account. Similarly, I go to my, it's still adding several ALBs to this account. And so as it goes through, the status in my security administrator account is going to become turn compliant. So until then, we're going to try and see what the status is in my member account, which is the third account in my organization. And I go to the webACL, I see there is a new webACL created by Firewall Manager. It this automatically added all the three ALBs in that particular account. So looks like Firewall Manager has indeed created new webACLs, added the right set of rule groups, the alert logic rule group in that webACL, and also associated those rule groups. So in a few seconds, Firewall Manager is going to get all that new latest status, and it's going to update the policy with or make it compliant. So for some reason, as it always happens during a demo, it's taking a while, more than I expected. But this should happen pretty soon. And just to show how Firewall Manager created config rules in your account, here is how Firewall Manager creates config rules. Firewall Manager, I can go to the config console and show you how Firewall Manager creates config rules, which are compliant in this case. It's just a matter of communicating this back to Firewall Manager. So it identified the three resources that are in scope in this particular account. And it further propagates that information back to Firewall Manager. Okay, there it is. So now we see that all three accounts went compliant, and you can see the list of accounts there, and Firewall Manager shows the list of resources if they are non-compliant. Otherwise, Firewall Manager says it's compliant. It means it's protected all resources in that particular account. Now, what I also wanted to show today is when a new ALB is created in the child account or one of the accounts, Firewall Manager automatically adds those ALBs or protects those ALBs as well. So I create this new load balancer, and let me call this ALB4, because I think I already have 3 ALBs in this account. I'm going to create a new application load balancer, call it ALB4. I'm going to just use some default settings because there is no actual application behind this ALB. It's just a dummy application load balancer. And then, okay. So this ALB it's going to take a few seconds while ALB is being provisioned. And as soon as the ALB is provisioned, config knows about this new ALB, and that information is propagated to Firewall Manager. That allows Firewall Manager to automatically add that particular resource or ALB to make it compliant. So if I go back to my WAF console, which shows the 3 ALBs that are protected, there is soon going to be a 4th ALB. Oh, I think I closed my WAF tab. So I'm going to open the WAF console, go to the WAF console and show how there is this new ALB. And again, I need to choose the specific region. And all Firewall Manager policies are regional. That means any policy that you create can only apply to resources in that particular account. And of course, you can create multiple policies in that particular organization. So it's going to probably take a few seconds while the ALB is still being provisioned. Okay, still refreshing again. Takes a while for the ALBs to be provisioned. And once they are, okay, there it is, their ALBs are provisioned. So shortly after that, ALBs propagate that information to the config, and config quickly identifies, there it is, ALB. The WAF also has the ALBs. There are 4 ALBs now that are protected by WAF, and that got automatically added, whereas previously we saw there were 3 ALBs assigned to this particular web ACL. So yeah, that's how you can use Firewall Manager to apply alert logic rules or any other manage rules or custom rules. And more importantly, as a member account, I can edit this web ACL and further add my own rules to it. In this account, I don't have any other rules, but I can totally add other rules of my own and add them to my web ACL, and those would apply only to this particular account and these particular resources. It will not impact any of the other accounts that were in the scope of the Firewall Manager. So that was about how you get started and create policies. Now, quickly moving on with talking about pricing. Firewall Manager costs, or there are charges for every policy that you create with Firewall Manager. Now, if you have not subscribed to Shield Advanced or using AWS WAF or Shield Standard, Firewall Manager policy costs $100 per policy per region. Of course, as I said earlier, every policy is regional. So it charges per $100 per policy per month, of course, and it's all prorated by hour. And you can have any number of accounts or resources it protects. And in addition, of course, you would pay for the underlying resources that Firewall Manager creates. That includes the AWS WAF resources or web ACLs or rules created by Firewall Manager. It also includes, meaning you'll also be charged for the config rules that are created by Firewall Manager. That is in addition to the $100 per policy. On the other hand, if you subscribe to Shield Advanced, which is a different managed service for DDoS protection, which includes AWS WAF with it, and Shield Advanced also includes Firewall Manager with it. You can create any number of policies or create any number of WAF rules. All of those are included within Shield Advanced price. You only pay for Shield Advanced. But you, of course, pay for any config rules created by Firewall Manager. More details about Firewall Manager pricing, of course, are available on our website, and more details about WAF and config pricing are also available on the respective websites. And lastly, Firewall Manager is available today in these 3 regions, or more specifically 2 AWS regions in US East and US West. In addition, Firewall Manager is also available globally on all CloudFront edge locations. So, and of course, that means that we have a single policy that spans across all edge locations, hundreds of those edge locations worldwide. So that was our session for today. Thank you very much for joining this session. You can learn more about AWS Firewall Manager on our website. And if you have more questions, feel free to ask those in our Q&A box, and we'll hang around for more questions in the next few minutes.